Good morning, everyone. How's it going? Hope you're all doing well. It's lovely to see so many of you. And so I have a pretty unique setup in this room where I am right now. This is the space that I'm in. I've actually moved since that bio was written. I'm sorry I didn't update it. I'm actually in Dallas, Texas now. And I'm at the Suzuki Music Institute of Dallas. And so this is one of my teaching studios here in Texas. And this is a camera that actually takes in the whole room, which has been really invaluable for me in all of this COVID craziness. So it's enabled me to really be quite functional. And the piano is over here, and I have you can't see it very well, but I've got a screen, and I can show it to you, that looks like this. So you guys can see yourselves. But it's a gigantic 30-inch touchscreen monitor. And so what's nice about that is that when I'm working with you all, I can see you very clearly. Even when there's so many of you, you're all about this big instead of this big. So it makes it a lot easier to be able to see what's going on. So yeah. Dalcroze is something that I just love. It's something that has totally changed the way I think about music and how I experience music, and I'm thrilled to give you a virtual experience of that today. The one thing that I'm going to ask is that you all move, please. I want you to move. Dalcroze is not a spectator sport. This is not an armchair event. It really matters that you move. Just watching it is not the same. If you have a reason that you can't move, I totally get it, and by all means, you're welcome to stay. But I want you to, as much as possible, to get up out of your chair and move in your space. If you need to modify an activity for any reason, please feel free to do so. If you have a question about anything that we're doing, please feel free to ask, so that way I can address any questions that you have. I will ask that you don't use the chat to ask questions, though. Go ahead and just unmute yourself and say, I don't understand something, because it's too hard for me to watch you play the piano and keep track of it. I just can't do it. So don't hesitate to raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask a question. Does it make sense? Are we good? In general, I will ask that everybody keep muted, though, because otherwise we'll get feedback and that will get tricky. So, do you have any questions about that before we get started? Love it. So, what I'd like for you to do is you're going to just go for a walk in the space, in your space, whatever your space is. And ideally, when you do this, if you could have your camera set up so that way I can see you moving in your space, that's always ideal, so I can see. But don't feel the need to be always right in front of the camera. It's totally fine to actually use the space. If you go off camera, it's all good. But I want you to go for a nice, just leisurely walk through the space. I'm going to play some music, and you're just going to move with my music. And if at some point I say the word eep, then I want you to go for just a little trot in your space. Just a little trot, not enough, just a little bit. You could even use just a very small space to make your little tiptoe run or your little trot happen. I'd like for you to do that. Then I say return, and you go back to your walk. Just as you were. Make sense? Are you with me? Here we go. Let's try it. So yes, you're with me. Step, 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 step. Yes. Try to make your feet match me. So Koyu-chan, your feet are a little bit too slow. Yes. Find my pulse. Put that pulse in your feet. Step, step, step. And then feel free to visit all the corners of your room. Explore every one. Try moving from the diagonal to the diagonal. Yes, Gay, you're right with me. Yes, thank you, Tracy. Yes, it's Sarah. I can see your hands moving just like your feet would be. Thank you. That's a good modification. Get ready for an eep. Eep. Step, 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 step. Return. Thank you, stepping. Excellent. You're right with me. Good for you, Elena. Yes, Betsy, you're right there. Beatrice, that's fabulous. I love it how you went around the kitchen table. Very good. Return. 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 Nicely done. Good. Now I'm going to introduce a news signal. And when you hear that news signal, you follow my music. Oop. Yes, Tracy, way to be right with me. That's fantastic. Good, Koyu. Yes, that's exactly right. Thank you, Lynn. Now, I love how some of you are starting to engage your arms in a way that connects your upper body to your lower body. However you feel, but let your arms become involved now, especially for this pulse, which is quite a bit slower. Eep. Return. Eep. Return. Up. Good. So, what can you tell me about these different ways that you're stepping? Talk to me about what are you hearing when you move, and what does it feel like when you move it? Anyone?
Joy.
Joy. Well, I'll take joy any day. Thank you, Beatrice, for that. That's the way to start any day, right? Good. What else?
Fun.
It's fun. Why is it fun? Can we just talk about that for a second? What's the fun? What makes it fun when you're doing it? Let's talk about that.
Because you follow the music and
Yeah,
the rhythm change.
Mm-hmm.
And you can create some motions like follow the music. Yeah.
Yeah.
Running is fun.
Keep going.
Running is fun. Running
is fun.
Yeah.
Can I tell you how much kids love to run? Kids love to run. It's one of the favorite things when kids come to one of my classes. They're like, "I love your class because I get to run around," and that's excellent. But the change part, I just want to go back to what the other person just said, is that the change is fun. When you're doing one thing and then all of a sudden you have to change, change can be fun. Sometimes I think as we get older, we become leery of change, but actually change can be fun. And that adaptation is a fun challenge that when you master it, it's like, hey, I'm on top of it. He can't trick me. And that's fun. That's fun. What else? What did you notice about the music? What did you notice about the music and how it related to the way that you move? How would you describe it?
It really did regulate your mood. Like the first F major improvisation was just very joyous, and And the slow one really did invite the upper body. I felt like it did take over all your limbs.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that. Um, yeah, there was a slower version, and then there was this sort of joyous walk, and then there was also a what? There was something that was, how would you describe it? Just,
Maybe a little heavier or weighted sounding.
there was some that had more weight to them. Yes, what else?
Meditative, maybe?
Hmm I'll take that. Yes, what else?
There
Well,
was two different versions of the slow one that I really liked. So there was the minor and then there was the major, but it gave a sense of like severity versus like clouds.
Huh? This
Um,
is so, this is really interesting. I would just want to address that because you're right. There's a particular rhythm that I'm after with this. There's a certain rhythmic ideal that we're going for with this. But what you're talking about, which I think is so useful, is that there is a different affect. That each of these different rhythms can have a different affect. And one might be severe, it might be more heavy, it might invite a certain type of gesture. And then there's another kind that might be more light, it might be more capricious, it might feel more airy, and that has a different feel, even though it might be the same rhythmic value, which is kind of interesting. You know, it brings up a lot of interesting points that we oftentimes forget about when we talk about rhythm, let's say, which is useful.
I felt like the slower one felt swooping. I think that in the hearing these large movements from low to high made me want to move my arms. And then the faster rhythm, very light, very, okay, this little now move our feet this fast, this, because I'm not sure we've talked about that one.
We have it, but can I just talk about your Betsy? I love Betsy's gesture. Just as she's talking, I don't even have to hear her say anything. Just, that. I mean, I could hear my music in what she just demonstrated. It was so lovely. And then this little, tossing of the feet, so to speak, is just really great. And I don't think that's a unique thing just for adults. Kids do this a lot too, if we allow them space to talk about this kind of thing, which is really, I think it's fascinating and very fun, very interesting to talk about. Yeah, other ideas before we go on with that? Yes.
Say that I was feeling really cold and I didn't want to get out from under my scarf and blankets, and I finally moved my furniture enough I could move, and I felt alive, and I'm like, oh yes, I love to move. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so glad. That's great. That's so much fun. Well, in Dalcroze, we talk about these things that we just did in a kind of a specific way. Specifically at my school, at the Dalcroze School of the Rockies, we have some terms, and I just want to throw those out to you because I think it's useful. We had this idea of the walking beat. Whatever that is. And then we had these little guys. And those with this little toss back and forth that I'm seeing from Paola. It's so lovely. It just starts to happen, right? That starts to groove, and that's great. What is the relationship from those notes to the beat? What is the musical relationship of those two things?
Twice as fast.
It's twice as fast. That's exactly right. And in this context, we call those the divisions. So we've got the beats, and then we've got the divisions. And those are not just unique to Dalcroze, right? Lots of people use those terms, so I don't think that's something that's unique. But the idea of the beat being a walking pulse is really important. And then when I had the or what's that relationship?
Twice slower.
Yes, it's
Major and
twice
minor.
slow. That's twice as slow. And there's also a major-minor relationship. And I'm so glad that you're hearing that and talking about it in terms of the affect first, which is great. So what is the mood of it first, and then the other, which is super. But it is twice as slow. And for that twice as slow that's above the beat, we call that the multiple, because it's a multiple of the beat. In this case, it's twice as slow. Now, there's other versions of this multiple and other versions of those division. It doesn't always have to be twice as fast. It could be other things, but that's enough for now. So good. So we've got beats, we've got divisions, we've got multiples. It could be any note value, couldn't it, right now? I haven't talked anything about notation, just talking about general terms, which is very useful for us. So I want to play another game with whole body movement, just because I know it's cold. It's not as cold here as it is there, but I can appreciate it. I remember what it was like to live in the East Coast, what it was like in the Midwest. So yes. Yesterday it was 80 degrees. Can you imagine? 80 degrees in November, isn't that insane? So I want you to put your feet about shoulder width apart, please, and do a slight turn out with your heel. So that way your toes are pointed slightly out, and that you can shift weight easily. You can have your feet be about shoulder width apart, or mine are a little bit further than shoulder width, that's fine. And just shift weight a little bit from one side to the next. And I want you to, as you shift weight, I want you to let your arms come into play like you were doing before, but let them drop. Let them drop from one side to the next. And you're going to do a nice big swing. We're going to slowly make our swing a little bit bigger. So we have drop, lift, drop, lift, drop, lift, drop, lift, drop, lift, drop, lift, drop, lift. Yes, just like so. Keep going with that. Drop, lift, drop, lift, drop, lift, drop, lift, drop, lift. Yes, nicely done. Let your weight go in the center. Good. If you hear this sound, let me hear that one more time. If you hear that sound, I want you to figure out a way to do a full turn in your space. A nice full turn. Yes, thank you, Baita. Look at that full pirouette. That was gorgeous. Well done. Yes. Let your knees bend. Let your ankles bend. Feel that shift through the pelvis. Let your core really experience all of that grouping. You can go another direction on your turn. Now, if my music changes and it's no longer in this sort of drop, lift feel, I want you to just go for a walk through your space. Yes, thank you, Betsy. See if you can find my pulse. Yes, thank you, drop lift. Yes, can you do your drop lift facing me in some way? Face me when you do it, just so I can see you. And you can see other people drop lifting at the same time. What's happening now? Say goodbye to your friends on the screen and go for your stroll. Why? It's different music. How is it different? Try to find that pulse. Step, 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 step. Changes and it's not the movement that was walking through the space. If it's not that, it's something different. I want you to move sideways through this space. Sideways. Find a way to move sideways. Sideways in through the space. Yeah, nicely done. Now there's a few different ways that you can move sideways through this space. And I'm seeing some of you do different ways. Some of you are doing step, touch, step, touch, step, touch, and that's a fine way to do it. Step, touch, try that for just a second so you can feel that. Step, touch, step, touch, step, touch. And then you could actually travel that way through the space. It's kind of an unusual way to locomote. If somebody started moving this way in the grocery, you might look at them suspiciously. But what's kind of nice too is that when you do this, this is a nice way to avoid someone coming at you. There's a nice little just side shimmy that you can do, which is kind of nice. Good. What's another way that you can move sideways? How could you move sideways? Oh, yes, there's sort of a hopping gesture that could happen from one way to the other. Good. What else? What else could you do? One more time?
Grapevine.
The grapevine, absolutely. So for those of you that don't know the grapevine, you can start with whichever foot you wish. Take one foot and you step and cross over, and then you come across. Then you take that same foot and go behind or under, and then across. And you can go in either direction. Step back, step in front, step behind, step in front, step behind, step in front, step behind, step in front. But one of the things that I like about this is because when you do it, it's hard to do it without bending your knees. You have to kind of engage your knee a little bit here. Not a lot. It doesn't have to be like a full curtsy. There's no queen here. But it is nice to have that sort of feeling that there's a weight drop each time. And I like that. So explore some different ways of moving in sideways directions. You ready? Here we go. Try that. Which is this? Thank you. Drop, lift, drop, lift, drop, lift. Thank you. Nicely done. Thank you, turns. Which one is this? Yes, thank you. Forward motion throughout the room. And what about this one? Yeah, sideways. Nicely done. Very good. So talk to me now. What's happening in our music? What's happening in the music? I mean, there's lots of things that are happening, but specifically what that's telling you when it's time to change. And what's changing?
Your groupings of your beats.
The
The
meter.
groupings of my beats. That's exactly right. The meter. That's exactly right. So what are the different groupings that we have?
I think
3, 4.
3s and 4s.
3s and 4s and
2s.
and 2s and 2s. And which one was the 3s? Which one is the 3s?
The swinging.
Yeah, the swinging, that drop, lift, drop, lift. Very nice. Good. And which one was the 4s? Which one was the 4s? Yeah, the one where you're moving forward through the space. You're going forward through the space. Which one was the 2s? Which one was the 2s? The sideways one. Now, sometimes people get confused about 4 versus 2. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But I'm working really hard to try to play so that way it's clear. When I play in 4, what are things that let you know that it's in 4? The harmony. The harmony is a huge one. That's exactly right. What else is changing or helping to define the meter?
Melodic pattern.
The melodic pattern. That's exactly right. I am so thrilled that none of you said because the first one is strong or it's loud. Because I'm purposefully trying to not do that. I feel like that kind of playing is the kind that we care for the least. It's the kind that makes us feel like, oh, well, they just don't know any better. You know, that kind of thing. This overwhelming focus on, you know, it's a little bit sort of carnival-y, right? Not that there isn't a time and a place for it, but that's a little bit more pedestrian. It's a little more forward thinking. That's, hello, this is where the beat one is. But the other requires us to listen for other things. There's melodic pattern. There is the harmonic shifts that help us to know where that is, especially when we're in 2. can hear that. What else is changing when I'm in 2, just to drive it home?
So articulations change?
That's right. I'm really using articulation to help point that out as well. And this is one of the reasons why, and some of you might have heard this, like when I said to you, I'd like for you to please step all of the sounds that you hear, or step all of these together with me, step, 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 because it is still possible to hear, right? And that's not wrong. It's just I want you to feel something different in the moment. And this is something I always say to students. Yeah, we can hear those. We can hear those multiples. But I want you to try to feel the energy of the beat right now. And that's where I'm after, because that is by comparing all of those beats and the groupings, we get new information, which is super cool. Any comments or questions about that? Did you notice, did I stay in the same tonality in my improvisation? Did I play in the same style? No. This is so important. It is so important to change that, change it up a lot, because students need to hear what all of these different qualities can be like. 4 can feel like many things. 3 can feel like many things. It doesn't have to always be, for instance, light and airy. It can be big and swoopy. It can have lots of different affects. And the more that we step them, the more that we move them in our bodies, we gesture them in our bodies, the more information we get. And sometimes it's information that you can't easily see on the page. It's information that lives inside. And one of the things that I'm really pleased about, in not only in academia, but especially in pedagogy circles nowadays, is that we're giving credibility to how things feel. We're really starting to talk about that there is a feeling that's associated with music, and it's not a bad thing to talk about that. And we can accept lots of plurality with it. People can have different interpretations and expressions of it, and that's useful. But talking about it is kind of cheap a little bit. It's much more important to do it, to experience it, to feel it. That's where we have to start first, is from that experience. And then the conversation, I think, becomes a little bit more multidimensional. Does that make sense? Is that clear? Renee, I feel like you have a question mark on your forehead as I'm talking. Are you with me, or does that feel uncomfortable? Are you okay? Okay, good. I just want to make sure that you're with me. Very good. If you have a ball, I'd like you to grab your ball. Now, you could have 2 options that are, there's many types of balls that you could use. You could use this kind that is like a soft, squishy ball. You can sometimes see these in grocery stores, like in those cages, although this is a smaller version of them. I got this from a gym supply company, but you can also get them on Amazon. It's called PG Softs, and they're great because if you were to ever take them out in a private lesson, it's super easy to use and you don't have to worry about anything getting broken. So I like these a lot. But then you could also just use a tennis ball. And I like tennis balls because they're easy to carry and they're easy to hold. Smaller children have trouble with these, but you can do what feels good. So what I'd like for you to do is be with me, and we're gonna go bounce, catch, pass, 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 bend your knee with every bounce, please, and sing, bounce, catch, pass, yes, improvise, sing with me, please, go bounce, catch, pass, bounce, catch, pass, do it with ease. Now we're gonna change, bounce, catch, 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 bounce, catch. Try to change the ball with every single bounce. You go bounce right, bounce left, bounce right, bounce left. But if that's too hard, you can catch with both hands. I don't care, no I don't, just have a good time. We say bounce, catch, bounce, catch, bounce, catch, bounce, catch. Return to bounce, catch, pass, 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 bounce, catch, pass. Now for a new one. We go bounce, catch, toss, catch, 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 relax. Shake that out. Very good. I want you to do the same thing, but follow me at the piano. When we do bounce, catch, how many things are there? 2. Very good. Thank you, Sarah. There are 2 things. When we do bounce, catch, pass, how many things are there? There are 3. Very good. When we do bounce, catch, toss, catch, there are 4. Very good. Start with 3s, please. Nicely done. That's a little tricky, isn't it? Very good. Good for you guys. So I want to I would just like you to have a seat. You've been working very hard, very hard. So have a seat, and I'd like for you to make it so that way I can kind of see you, like you're where you're seated. So if I don't need to see your from your nose up, but I would like for you to be able to. I can see your lap. I think so I can see your lap. That'd be great. And I'm going to show you a couple of things about what activities like I just did is, of course, something that you can do with your kids. You can do this in a private lesson very easily. very easily with them. And especially when things are going tricky, like maybe they didn't practice the way they were supposed to, or any of those things, getting out a ball can make life lovely. So that's nice. The other thing that I like to do is to teach kids how to conduct. But I like to use a different type of conducting that helps us to define the beats in space more clearly. So in Dalcroze terms, we call these arm beats. They're called arm beats. So I'd like for you to start with your hands up and just sort of tickle your eyebrows a little bit. Yes. And we're gonna go knees and head, knees and head. You wanna make sure you touch your temples when you say the word head. It goes knees and head, knees and head, knees and head, and knees and head. Now we're gonna change, knees and wide. And when I say wide, I don't mean like out to here, but like to this, so I can kind of see my fingertips in front of me, but my arms are straight. And I oftentimes say this to kids that it's like magic coming out of your fingertips. You are Harry Potter. You are Hermione Granger, sending out magic out your fingertips. And then touch your temples for the end. So it's knees and wide, head, knees and wide, head, knees and wide, head. And now we go back to twos, knees and head, knees and threes, knees and wide and twos, knees and head, knees and threes, knees and wide and head, knees and wide and head. And now we're going to go to fours, knees and clap and wide and head, knees and clap and wide and head. It's not a big clap, it's not one of those. It's just a nice little kiss of your fingertips together. It goes knees and clap and wide and head. This is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Nicely done. And clap and wide and head. Get ready, because now we'll change. 3, 1, 2, 3. It's knees wide and 4. Knees and clap and wide and 3. Knees and wide and 2. Knees and head. Knees and 3. Knees and wide and head. Knees and wide and 4. Knees and wide and head. Nicely done. If we had more time, I would actually put you guys in breakout rooms and I would have you do this activity with each other. But you guys know each other in Michigan, so I expect that at your next meeting that you have in person, you do a little bit of conducting with each other and you do some calling the changes. When do I call the change? On the knees or at the head? Where do I call the change? Always at the head, because that way it gives you time to prepare. You have to be able to prepare it. If you don't, then you're always going to be chasing after each other, and that's a definite joy killer. You know, when you're not able to keep track of what's going on. All right. Do you notice too that when I call the changes, I just do it as much as I can see you being able to be successful? That's another important tenet of what makes Dalcroze Dalcroze, is that joy is imperative in our learning environment. We have to be able to be silly and make mistakes and not worry. But if I go faster than you can really keep up with me, it's not fun anymore. Then you're just gonna feel bad about it. That also doesn't mean that I don't challenge. Sometimes I'm gonna throw in some challenges in there just to keep everybody listening and focused and on their toes. And that is also equally valid, because it makes it so that we have to listen. It's just that it's a really careful balance. And that's why it's so important that I see you, that I watch you when we're doing it. Does that make sense? Good. I didn't tell you this at the beginning, and I'm sorry, but I have this lesson all written out for you. So I'm going to send it to you as a digital copy, so you don't need to write anything that we've been doing down. I have it written down for you, so just do that. But for this next thing, if you have a piece of paper, it would be great for you to write some stuff down. So Dalcroze had this really fabulous way of thinking about meter. And And that's kind of what I want to talk about now. And Elena, if you would like to make me spotlighted, now would be a good time. This would be a good time to spotlight me, because I think it'll make it easier for everyone to read, especially on the Zoom recording. So if you could spotlight me now, I think that would be great. So I just want to summarize some of the stuff that we've done today. We have beat, and we have division, and we have multiple. So we have these different ideas, and if I said that my beat was a quarter note, what would my division be? It would be 2 eighth notes. And my multiple would be a half note. But what's great about that is that as much as we've been moving today, I haven't talked about any of that per se. It's just the feeling of it in the body. That's what matters. I could have said that the beat was this. And if this was my beat, then what would my division be? 2 quarters. And my multiple would be a whole, sorry. And if I said that my beat was an eighth note, then my division would be 2 whats?
So 16.
16ths, thank you. And then my multiple would be a
Quarter.
quarter, you got it. And again, that's so useful because invariably students will play pieces that are, let's say, in 4/8 time, and they will think of it as if this is the beat. And we don't want that. Or they'll see something written more commonly in 2/2, and they'll have this as the beat, and they will not understand really what it feels like. And that's critical that they understand that. And so when you use terms like beat, division, and multiple in a very general way, it opens the door for students to understand the music in different ways. And in particular ways that invite feeling, which is what I find to be really valuable. So then we have this idea of meter. Now, in every one of our examples, the beat was divided into 2s, and because it's divided into 2s, we can say it's simple meter, because the beat is divided by 2. That's really what that's all about. And there are feelings associated with this. I'm not going to worry about that for right now, just know that that's the case. But Dalcroze had this fabulous way about talking about meter. And what he would say, let's say it was duple meter, he would say there's 2 beats in the measure, and whatever gets the beat is what you write.
First.
And so no matter what it is, that's just what you write. And I love this type of meter signature because it's very clear. It's very clear to students what they are counting, what are they addressing in the score. They don't have to do any math, and that's great. I love math. Don't get me wrong, love math. But in music, I want to focus on music, and I want to focus on how things feel, and this allows me to do that. So in that way, 2 over a quarter note is the same as 2 over, well, whenever I explain this to kids, I always talk about pi. And I say, if you have quarters, you divide a pi into quarters, how many will you have? And they say 4, yes. Again, and this is where we start thinking about fractions, and this is where the kids start thinking that time signature is a fraction. It's not. It is literally 2 of these, and this number corresponds to that note. So same thing for this. If you divide a pi in half, how many parts will you have? 2. If you divide a pi into 8s, how many parts will you have? 8. So there it goes. So that way they can see what those time signatures are, which is great. And then we were in 3 time in groups of 3s, again, we could have 3 over a quarter, which would be 3/4. Or we could have 3 over a half, which would be 3/2. And much less common, but present, 4 over, oops, sorry, I did it backwards. 4 over half, which is 4/2. Now 3 is a slightly different beast when it comes to the multiple. Remember when we did the swing, like so? We were stepping not something that was twice as slow as the beat. It was how many times as slow as the beat? 3 times slower. So in this case, the multiple is going to be 3 times as slow as this. In this case, it's that. In this case, it's that. In this case, yes, so that's that. I don't know why I did 4 over 2 here. This is a total mistake. Please excuse me. That was supposed to be this. I'm so sorry. People are like, who's teaching this class anyway? What's happening here? What I meant to do was this. I'm so sorry. I never put myself above making lots of mistakes. So there we go. So 3 over 8 is 3 over 8. Please somebody tell me, what would I put here for the multiple? So I don't embarrass myself any further.
Got a quarter.
I got a quarter. Thank you. Thanks, I appreciate that. So this is just kind of like an aside for this, and that's going to come up in for what we're going to do next. But does that make sense for this? And then of course the same application works for 4 time. I don't need to do the rest of them. Do you have questions about that? How that feels, how it looks like? Okay. What I would like for us to do next, and if you could unspotlight me, that would be great, is I would like for you to go for a walk, and I would like for you to clap whenever you hear the beginning of a new grouping, a new beat one. We're going to give that a name. We're going to just call it the crucis. So you're going to clap for that crucis. And so, like, for instance, it might be this. If we were in 3, it might be this. If we're in 2, it could be this. If we're in 4. Does that make sense? So just clap for the crucis wherever you hear the crucis, and just go for a walk through your space and enjoy that. There's going to be a pattern that happens, and I want you to see if you can catch it. All right? Is that clear? Yes? Let's just do a little warm up first, so that way we're together. Let's start in 3s. Clapping those. You can hear it in my treble. And now you can hear it has changed. And now it's in 2s. And now it's in 4s. And I'm going to slow it down a little bit and see if you can catch this pattern. is that pattern? Yes, it's 3, one group of 3, and then there's a group of yes, there's how many groups of 2? 2. So when you move this to this space, it'll be 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Try that with me. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and keep going. Now listen carefully, there's going to be a change here. What happened at the end? Something happened at the end. What did you hear? It's kind of an interesting moment. Just listen for a second and see if you can tell me what happens. What happened? Instead of 3, 2, 2, it went 3 plus 3. There's a second group of 3. And now, what happens? What's that grouping at the end? What do you hear? Yes, 2 groups of 4. Ah! Does anybody know this piece? Does anybody know? Amber, do you know it?
It sounded Schumann-esque to me.
It's very Schumann-esque.
Yeah.
This is a piece by Brahms, believe it or not. This is from the Brahms C minor trio, opus 101, and it has tons of changing meter in it, which I think is way cool. So I'm going to share my screen here real quick, just so you can see this, and I'll play it. And I just want you to have a chance to look at it. I think it's it's such an interesting little piece, and it has so much to offer. And I encourage you to check it out in full score. I've made a little arrangement of it here so you can see, and you can see how it's set up. Sorry. I don't know why I'm reading off the screen. I should be reading off the page. It's funny. But that's how it goes the whole time. And then this moment right here is where it's going to get dicey. Isn't that just beautiful? It's such an interesting little moment. Now, those little dotted lines are those are actually Brahms's. They actually are bar lines. He groups it into twos. But I really can't hear this piece without hearing this because of the bass as one idea, and this is the other. And every time I hear it, I always hear that in 4. I don't hear it in 2. And I'm not saying that there is one way to think about it, but I actually play it differently because of that. I think it and I imagine in the shape of the measure being in 4 instead of in 2. And I think that's part of the artistic process. Just because it's labeled as 2 doesn't mean that's necessarily how we feel it. There's lots of opportunity for other ways of knowing. And it's really about how what I see on the page, for instance, the counterpoint here, relates to the meter. And it's partially also because of the harmony and how that works together. It makes a lot of sense. Could somebody make an argument to say, no, it has to be in 2? I think they could. But this is part of what I think makes artistic expression and discussion interesting, is how and why we feel that way. And when you're moving it, that gives you way more information to me that's centered on what's on the inside, which I think is really important. Do you have questions about that? I know we're out of time, so I'm sorry, but
I do have a question, but it's more related to the dotted rhythm. How do you move for students to understand 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 1? How do you have a special movement for that?
I do, and it's I have them move in a way that's very similar to like a pirate swagger. Like I have them imagine that they're like Bluebeard or they're Captain Hook, and they're gonna take a step, and then they have that wooden leg that just kind of limps along. So it's swag, 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 swag. That's what they want to feel, so that way they can feel that limping sort of fall of the weight into the short note. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any questions about the class, about Brahms, about anything that we discussed today? Or any other questions that you might have? I am totally open to swagger discussions too.
I just want to say thank you. I was doing my program. My husband's working upstairs and he couldn't believe I was actually working. Why are you making all that noise with the ball? I'm working.
Good for you.
But it's fun. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Any other questions?
I'm curious about how you developed your piano skills, your improvisation skills.
So that's all part of Dalcroze teacher training. So this is a whole thing for us to learn how to do this. I can tell you that when I sprung from the womb, I did not spring with piano skills that were improvisatory. I had to learn how to do that. And but it's a skill like anything else. So I strongly encourage you to do some Dalcroze teacher training. It will help you out so much and give you so many ideas on how to address so many of these issues with your students.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Oh, go ahead, Paula.
Oh, I was just going to ask if you can give us a quick snapshot of what that training looks like.
Sure. You could also find all of this information on my website, and you're welcome to email me. But essentially, there are 3 different levels for Dalcroze certification. So we have our Dalcroze certificate, we have our license, and we have the Diplôme Supérieur. So the certificate is kind of like an undergraduate degree, our license is like a master's, and the Diplôme Supérieur is our terminal degree. It's kind of like a doctorate. In order to get the certificate, which is our first credential, there are 3 levels that lead to that. So there's level 1, 2, and 3. And so that timeline really kind of depends on each individual person, on their skills and what they know, because there's a whole movement component. There is the eurythmics, there's a whole solfège component, and there's an improvisation component. There's also pedagogy and plastique animé. So there's a lot that goes into that package. So, but that's what it starts to look like. Make sense? Good. And
Thank you.
Beatrice?
Well, I was
Beatrice?
gonna say, well, I was just going to say, I really enjoyed it, Jeremy. And the changing meters I find to be so interesting as more literature is coming out with 5/8 time or changing meters. And even as a teacher, when the music goes fast, I really have to, it's not very natural for me, especially as we get to music that's more diverse. That it's really hard for me to internalize these complicated meter changes. So this was fun. Thank you.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Beatrice?
I was curious to know if you did your training from Geneva, right? Because it's where Dalcroze started.
I did my terminal degree in Geneva. So I did my Dalcroze certificate and license at the Langy School in Boston, Massachusetts, and Cambridge. And then I did the Diplôme Supérieur in Geneva at the Institut Jacques Dalcroze and the Haute École de Musique there. And then now in Dallas and in Denver, I offer Dalcroze teacher training on my own because I did the diplôme. So yeah.
Are you associated with, I think her name is Deborah Grindle. She teaches at Baldwin Wallace and she's also certified, and I think she's part of a training, right?
So Mary Debria Grindal was actually my teacher. So she was my first introduction to Dalcroze back when I was a freshman in Cleveland. And what's really lovely is that she now teaches sometimes for me at my school in Colorado, which is a really lovely full circle. And one of my graduates from my program who studied with Mary came and studied with me to do her Dalcroze teacher training, now is teaching at Baldwin Wallace Conservatory in Cleveland. So it's funny how the circle of students kind of goes like this, which is really lovely.
Yeah, we invited her at the Michigan conference in 2019, and actually one teacher got so inspired that she is actually doing her certification now. So that's, thank you for doing this today. It really reminds us how we need to connect to our body and help our students that way too.
Thank you. I'm so glad. Any other questions? Love it. Well, I know you all have things to do, so thank you for being here today and for inviting me to be here. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it. And we'll see you hopefully again sometime soon.
Yes, thank you so much,
Thank
Jeremy. Thank you very
you.
much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.